Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers, sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to LL3 Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from beautiful swampy Manchester, South Florida. And today's date is Monday, June 29th, 2020. So let us begin. Oh, well. Yes, I hear a little wind in the background, folks, but that's okay. Just a little breezy, so it's nice. Not as hot. Just browsing through Censored.News, something Mike Adams puts out, multiple links and so forth. Very interesting what's going on in the world. To hear about there's one right here from Information Liberation, came out yesterday. White supremacist mass shooter at Jefferson Square Park turned out to be Hispanic homeless. Interesting claim here, and of course, why every person in America needs to become a prepper during the second half of 2020. It's from the End of the American Dream, Mike Snyder. He got some good content, folks, so you should always check it out. And of course, here from Breitbart, more than 60 people shot, 16 killed in Mayor Lightfoot's Chicago. Yeah, it tells you why gun control works. And of course, right down here, says Black Trans Lives Matter protests, racism exists because of capitalism. More brainwashing as usual. Italy sold to Big Pharma. Yeah, go to Censored.News. Yeah, this is pretty cool stuff here. And of course, News Target, that's Mike Adams' site. Lunatic leftists now claim milk is racist simply because it's white. Of course, SGT report has hair escaped from Minneapolis and Seattle. May give me an idea. I may have to look that. I may just do that one. Maybe a video. Let's just find out here. I'm just like browsing around, and got a couple of things I lined up here, which people should know about. And don't worry, it's not about gloom and doom and living in fear by any means. But it came out a few days ago to be exact. Yeah, okay, by Paul Craig Roberts. So, yeah, you know what? I might just do that. Yeah, what the hell? I'll put that in as one of my last articles I'm going to read. But it's like, it's just stuff you won't hear from the mainstream garbage media. They still want to advertise Marxist propaganda with technocratic support. Play a divide and conquer game, faction against faction. And of course, here, UN Secretary General calls for global governance with teeth. That's from LiveSite. And we could, this thing go on here. Leaders of Black Lives Matter pushing radical left agenda. Of course, Seattle police investigating shooting in a autonomous zone after reports of active shooter. So, yeah, so it's, insanity as usual. You still want to lock us in our little homes. You got to have us wear a mask everywhere we go. Looks like it's some lawsuit pending in Hillsborough County. Unless the Chris Ann Hall's behind that. Hopefully tune in 6 p.m. on YouTube. Just type in chrisannhall.com for more information. Good stuff. I always love her content. We follow each other on SoundCloud. I'm going to have to reactivate my account with them and share my show on that site. They're pro free speech from Sweden, so always and interesting here. Gab CEO warns Visa is helping to bring China's social credit score to America. That's according to SGT reports on their website. With blacklisted news, Mississippi to remove state flag, the last to display the Confederate battle emblem. Yeah, it's racist, right? But the BLM flag isn't. So anything about that? A lot of double speak. Central Mueller witness, a traffic a child traffic pedophile sentenced to 10 years in prison. Oh, I can't. Yeah, some blacklisted news, folks. Yeah, I'll do that. I will leave the Censored.News link on here, so you can folks check it out yourselves. And some good stuff. And I touched base with Mike Owen, we're Facebook pen pals and all that. So we follow each other on Twitter. So always, always like his content. Also, the whole thing is, we're not all here to be famous and have a pedestal and have the red carpet treatment. I think we're all like VIPs to the alternative media. To me, that's like, that's absurd. We like to put the message out, hear other reports that the garbage media doesn't want you to know. It's fun because everyone hates Trump, but they still buy the Mueller report. Oh, yeah, they still believe the Russians were involved, even though you get filed charges against them. Like, good effing grief. When you have animosity towards one man, you get distracted. Or anything. You get distracted. So, for 10 years, he's going to serve 10 years. I'm going to have to look at that one later. All right, but first, checking this one out from the Common Sense Show, Dave Hodges, which he's based out of Arizona. Always admired his content. Clergy response teams are being activated. Can you trust your pastor? This is what Mr. Hodges has to say about this. The stories are everywhere on the net. The clergy response team are being activated. That can mean only one thing. Someone inside FEMA is preparing the purge of conservatives, particularly conservative Christians, after the Democrats, i.e. Bolshevik communists, seized control of the government. Here is some relevant story that every American needs to be aware of, which explores the important answer to this question. Who's next? Has your pastor condemned the Islamic practice of beheading Christians? Does your pastor fear God, or does he fear Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and her promised persecution of anyone who speaks out against radical Islamic-inspired terrorism, and in the elements of a Red Dawn invasion force who have coalesced on our border, with many more coming? Has your preacher spoken out on behalf of the 70 million babies who have been butchered by Planned Parenthood? Who speaks for the babies? Who speaks for Christians? Who speaks for the citizens of a nation that are under judgment by God for their reprehensible sins? I have brought one major admonition for my fellow countrymen. What you are not going to be judged by the Almighty for your citizenship. Rather, you're going to be judged by your acceptance of Jesus as your Lord and as your Savior, or you walk in this path. And I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to be a preacher or anything like that, folks. Just as we have to say, being a Christian is not for the faint of heart. Maybe it's the fate of the modern Christian to die a martyr's death. Most disciples of Jesus were martyred for their uncompromising views toward corrupt civilian authority, except for John, who died of an extreme old age, and Judas, who committed suicide after betraying Jesus. Many of Jesus' followers met an untimely end. For an example, Peter was crucified head downward during the persecution of Nero. James was thrown from a pinnacle of the temple and then beaten to death with clubs. Thomas, the doubter, was run through the body with a lance at Coromandel in the East Indies. Yet today, most of our tax-exempt churches have embraced the suicidal course of Judas, as they have made a deal with the devil by espousing government doctrine even when it violates the Word of God. So what he's trying to say here, a lot of these churches, religious organizations, sold their soul to the state. Allah, 501c3. There's a whole list of these organizations. But I'm not here to address that. And I'll continue on, but all you got to do is a little looking. Hushmoney.org. That'd be a good site to check out, if it's still up or not. In opposition to the early founders of the church and in opposition to the teachings of Jesus Christ, today's church bends over in the face of evil. its acquiesces to the evil and drags its followers to the gates of hell by demanding compliance to the illegitimate authority and decidedly non-Christian forces which are subjugated this country. Today's pastors are doing so under the guise of bastardization of Romans 13. Yes, that's right. Obey the corrupt government that allows the Clinton crime family to steal billions as they have unleashed untold suffering upon the world with the illegitimate COVID-19 lockdowns. While this mafia tells us that God demands that we obey these criminals into complete bastardization of Romans 13. Should you leave your church? The truth be known, you really don't need the church. Remember, whatever two or more are gathered in his name, the Lord is present. When they estimate 100,000 pastors who belong to the clergy response team, it can be safely said that it would be better to lose your church and avoid being led astray by a government-serving clergy response team pastor than to lose your soul for all of eternity. There are other reasons to leave your church beside the fact that the most support the importation of an unknown number of terrorists to our country. According to the Pope, Allah and God are equals because the government says so, and Romans 13 commands you to obey. However, the words I just wrote put me in violation of the new interpretation of Romans 13. I am a sinner if I speak out about the forces who have perpetrated the rise of the satanic New World Order, which is now in place. The modern interpretation of Romans 13 is pure blasphemy. The scriptures has been morphed into a doctrine espousing the divine rights of kings, in which God has somehow chosen a king to ruthlessly rule over a people, and it is incumbent upon the people to accept their God-given fate. The flocks are commanded to submit himself to the governing authorities, and there is no authority except that which God has established. This false interpretation is nothing but a divine coronation of a ruthless, self-serving government, and Christians are expected to capitulate and honor the same kind of thievery, lawlessness, and murder which inspired Jesus to expel the money changers from the temple. Yet, much of the church remains silent on the evil that has been visited upon our country. Firebombing, looting, murder, and victimization of innocent people permeates our land, and yet many of the pastors are marching with these communist criminals in the streets, e.g. Joel Osteen. Think about that. Ask yourself, what kind of God would fail to command his clergy not to speak out and not to condemn the actions of the criminal money changers on Wall Street or the Antifa thugs that occupy Seattle? Those are inspired only by the love of money as they continue their heinous assaults upon humanity in the forms of unlabeled poisonous GMOs and theft of solvent home mortgages by the mega banks and the secret detentions and the murder of American citizens under the NDAA, supporting the doctrine of endless war in which millions die? What kind of God would order his followers to remain silent as the bankster-controlled government plans to commence a world war starting with Venezuela in order to support the preservation of the depopulation agenda of the globalists? In actuality, no God of the Bible would ever command his followers to both enable and to serve the evil which permeates our government. Wait a minute. You say that Trump will drain the swamp? That swamp will take a generation or of longer to drain. Is Hillary in jail? She's a low-hanging fruit, and she will still walk free, victimizing the world. Trump has done nothing about Hillary, which has been done about the Biden's crisis in Burisma in Ukraine. Nobody from the deep state ever goes to jail. Trump is nearly powerless without our help, and instead of helping him, we listen to pastors and priests who praise our corrupt leaders. Trump can only hope to slow it down, and by himself he cannot stop the complete obedience from a corrupt deep state, as they have taken a big step towards accepting the mark of the beast, i.e. national ID card that will soon be part of every wallet. This is a very dangerous precedent, and this could potentially imperil the salvation of millions if Christians allow this false doctrine of Romans 13 to further expand across our nation churches. Where is your pastor on this issue? Conclusion. You may not be able to answer this question, however. Your pastor may be someone who is helping the government gain information about you and your family. Is your pastor working for the enemy of all Christians as a member of the Clergy response team? In part 2 of this series, we will explore the answer to this important question, and information that will be exposed is stunning in its content. I think what I'll do, if I see if he gets the article on that, I will continue it. Call me out if I don't, folks. I'll love you for it. I was always good to keep myself on my toes too. People put me in check, out of love, that is. And he's right, because that's why when people ask me if I believe in God, and I go, yes, I do. And some of my friends, they're like, didn't know. However, I defy statism, tyranny, all forms, including within the churches. People claim to be this particular creed, and they sell themselves to the state. It's like even those folks out there that practice Judaism, they claim to be Judaic by faith, and they contradict their oath with heinous rhetoric. And I call them Ginos, Jew in name only. Or even when, I guess I can say in Revelations, chapter 2 and 3, verse 9, okay? So it comes out twice about beware of the Jews that lie. They're the synagogue of Satan. I'm just paraphrasing. So there's differences on that. So you always got to be aware, pay attention. And even with this, with the Bible and all the Bible, I always look at it as multiple books of information. Observe responsibly. Got to follow your heart and soul, what it means. There's some great books out there you can look up. Like even the late great Tex Mars wrote stuff like that. And that man was brilliant, I got to say. When it comes to information, I have to agree. He was like a walking encyclopedia. I read some of his books, and the cool thing about it, people can have different views, but they see if there's a problem, you can always read his work because it's very universal. So always got to look at these areas. And remember, Jesus was a rebel too. So if you believe him or not, in the character, he was a maverick for his time. And you cannot deny that. There's always been rebels in the Bible. Many of them out there. All God, you start reading, you'd be surprised. They're not going around being apple polishers. They stand for what's right. And they're trying to take that away. They're trying to hear all this garbage propaganda about, the statue, sculpture is a white Jesus, that's racist. Yeah, a lot of us know he came from the Middle East. Middle Eastern descent. He can be a lot darker than the actual statues. But you know what? I never look at it that way. There's always the character himself. It doesn't matter what they look like. That man said he was his hair is white as wool and eyes of fire. I'm not gonna, hey, if he's Middle Eastern descent, I'm African descent. Hey, I'm not gonna get mad about it. Please, if I had some African descent in my DNA, I'm gonna take it out. I'll be dead. Think about it, folks. So always gotta be vigilant in these matters because like I said, it is a one world order agenda. And many of my colleagues thought I was nuts when I told them about the horrific events on September 11, 2001 was a global government agenda. And you know what? They thought I was crazy. Not anymore. All you got to do is connect the dots and look at the patterns. National ID card. Yeah, part of the whole September 11 platform. Make us feel safe, which is a total wet dream. All right, so we're going to see what else we got here. Let's talk about the whole mask wearing policy. It looks like Broward County, Florida, they all want to wear a mask, walking around wearing these masks. It's like, hey, I'm not a surgeon. Shoot, I can breathe the air. But they don't want to teach you, a lot of them don't want to teach you about health. Okay? So, how to counter that with nutrition and so forth. So, let's see what Vice President Pence has to say. And it's from the Epoch Times. It says here, Pence, White House looks to governors to set mask-wearing policies. It's by Isabel Van Bergen. What's Miss Bergen has to say about this? Let's just check it out, folks. Vice President Mike Pence on June 28 said people should follow guidance from state and local officials on wearing masks in public to curb transmission of the CCP virus as cases surge in parts of the United States. Obey, my friends. I support freedom of choice, okay? So we will go on here. During an appearance of CBS Face the Nation, Pence pushed back against criticism that President Trump has not encouraged wearing face masks, noting that the president has indicated that he will leave it to the states to decide whether masks should be mandatory to protect against the Chinese Communist Party virus, or CCP, commonly known as the coronavirus. The White House wishes to defer to governments, Pence said. One of the elements of the genius of America is the principle of federalism, of state and local control. The vice president told guest host John Dickerson on June 28th, we made it clear that we want to defer to governors. We want to defer to local officials, and people should listen to them. So, we won't obey the feds, we'll obey our local warlords. Pence added that the White House believes masks should be worn in public whenever social distancing is not possible in a situation where authorities deem it as necessary to do so. He added that he had worn a mask on several occasions this week, and that Trump has worn a mask before. The United Center for Disease Control and Prevention has recommended not required the use of masks. The World Health Organization, meanwhile, updated its guidance on June 5th to recommend that government urge people to wear a fabric face mask in public. Dickinson challenged the White House's stance, saying that many believe the CCP pandemic is a problem that required a coordinated national result, which is what these outbreaks are showing. The virus doesn't know federalism, he told Pence. But Vice President rebutted. If we have taken that approach, we have never had the success that we had in greater New York City area. We have never had a success in Michigan or New Orleans because from early on, we were closely in partnership with governments to make sure that they had what they needed when they needed it, tailored to the unique circumstances in their states. Mike Pence, says it right here, Pence's remarks clashed with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who separately said on June 28th there should be a nationwide mandate for wearing a face covering to ward against spread of CCP virus. Definitely long overdue for that, Pelosi told ABC News on Sunday when asked about whether masks should be required. Go figure, she's always sold her ass to Big Pharma. Something to think about, right? Always read between the lines, my friends. According to Johns Hopkins University, more than 125,000 Americans have died from the virus so far. The COVID Tracking Project noted on Saturday that in the past several weeks, deaths have continued to fall, even as cases and hospitalizations spike across the South and the West. So it may be spiked, but there's no guarantees of higher deaths. Okay, so in an increase of U.S. states are requiring their residents to cover their faces when they visit essential business or public use transportation. California, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Illinois, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island have it mandatory to wear a mask. God bless involuntary servitude. But they don't want to teach you about health. Well, like I say, folks, always got to be vigilant on your health. I did enough shows on this, the stuff I share on my social media sites. pertaining to fighting infections. Remember, they all have an Achilles heel. I don't go around whoring, boozing like a fish. Well, I keep your body active as well. This is very dangerous, what they're doing. Expect some lawsuits are happening too. Because what happens is it violates your enumerated rights. A la 9th Amendment, and many of these states have it, including the District of Columbia, on natural rights. I can give you Article 1, Section 1 for California, Article 1, Section 4 of New Mexico. All you got to do is a little looking. And even Article 45 of the Maryland's Declaration of Rights. Just to give you a few. It's all out there. All you got to do is read your state constitution as well. It's self-explanatory. Remember, always got to, like I said, there's a lot of folks out there got to know about natural herbs, remedies, zinc and all that. I always preferred stuff from Mike Adams from Natural News. He's always been persistent and consistent, Plus, remember, he was banned on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So he's doing something right. So definitely check those out. But yeah, it's got to beware of the 13th, I call it a 13th Amendment issue on a federal level. So I want to continue on here. Let's talk about gun control in New Zealand. There are some articles on here. This one actually came from Ryan Foley by the Western Journal. Of course, World Daily released it. It says here, New Zealand gun crime reaches 10-year high despite strict gun control. Oh, yeah. So, you know how that goes. It's been more than a year since New Zealand instituted a strict gun confiscation in the wake of a mass shooting in Christchurch in March 2019. So according to liberal logic, gun crime in New Zealand should be at an all-time low now. But that's the opposite of what has happened according to figures by Radio New Zealand. Last year had the highest rate of gun crime and deaths involving foreigners for nearly 10 years. Gun control legislation implemented New Zealand in a ban all military-type semi-automatic weapons and so-called assault rifles. In an effort to take those weapons out of circulation, the country established a mandatory gun buyback. Come on, peasants. Bring in your stuff. We'll give you a cheap-ass coupon. And if you're a criminal, we're not going to ask you any questions. If you use it for a robbery, bring it over. I'm not going to ask you. No questions asked. In 2014, before the implementation of gun control, New Zealand had a gun-related death rate of less than 1 per 1 million. According to Radio New Zealand, the nation's recorded 2.4 gun-related deaths per 1 million people in each of the past 2 years. So, if the goal is to reduce gun violence, gun control is an epic failure. At the very least, gun control does very little to reduce gun crime. This should not come as much as a surprise. A 2018 study by 2 pro-gun control groups found no observable effect on gun homicides and suicide rates in California that could be linked to gun control laws in the state. Similarly, if gun control worked as well as liberals claim it does, instead of using liberals, use the word tyrants. You're being too nice. Chicago will be the peaceful utopia. Instead, the Windy City is an epicenter of gun violence. Last weekend, 104 people became victims of gun violence in the nation's third largest city, with 14 losing their lives. Perhaps it never occurred to gun control advocates that criminals, who by definition do not obey laws and are deterred by strict gun control. As a group of New Mexico sheriffs speaking out against proposed gun control legislation in their state in 2019 explained, you're just taking guns out of law-abiding citizens' hands. And remember this, folks, in New Mexico, Article 1, Section 4 of your state constitution says you have inherited rights. Inherent rights. Okay? You can look that up. Actually it's Article 2, Article 2, Section 4, under their Bill of Rights. Okay? So my mistake, and I do apologize for that. This is not going to affect the criminals out there. They're going to be able to get guns, and they do not follow the law. In America, law-abiding citizens need guns than ever as left-wing mobs push to defund police and go on rampages of looting and destroying businesses. This anarchistic unrest comes in the wake of the death of George Floyd in a police custody a month ago. So, George Floyd's death is a 24/7 excuse for everything, just like 9/11. Socially engineered, right? Yet these arguments do not deter liberals. Should Biden win the presidency in November, he has promised to take he takes any gun extremists, Beto O'Rourke, his gun control czar. Liberals would love to implement the same gun control measures in America that have proven effective in New Zealand. In the light of failure of gun control measures to reduce gun violence in New Zealand, it might make sense for the nation to reconsider its assault of weapons bans and gun confiscation programs. Instead, New Zealand is doubling down on its gun control efforts. According to Reuters, New Zealand implemented a gun registry earlier this month. Residents would be required to update the registry as they buy or sell guns. Yes, so they're anti-right of privacy. Hooray! Thank you, government. Without you, I don't know. I feel so safe. It might seem tempting to dismiss the idea of such wide-reaching gun control overtaking effect in the United States. After all, the right to keep and bear arms is explicitly protected in the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And we can use the Ninth Amendment as well. Always play checkmate. See, they'll use one amendment, but they forget the Ninth. Okay, for Miss Bailey, for the Ninth, because that's a checkmate. All right, we'll just continue on here. It's a natural right. However, liberals have made it clear that they see abolishing the Second Amendment as part of their long-range plan. The late Supreme Court Justice Paul Stevens wrote it in much of the 2018 New York Times pro-OEP title, "Repeal the Second Amendment," which I've read it a long time ago. The guy's a fool, okay, and a Jim Crow, okay, another Jim Crow hack, or was. Liberals and Democrats should look at the statistics in New Zealand and here at home before moving ahead with their gun control agenda, even though these statistics probably will have the New Zealand effect, causing liberals at home to push for more gun control, not less. It was originally from the Western Journal, and Mr. Foley, you're too soft. You gotta use tyrants. You gotta use treasonous quacks. And remember, we got natural rights. Repealing the Second Amendment. If you still got the Ninth, repeal the Second Amendment, we still have the right to keep and bear arms. Amendment 9. What's so hard about that? Call it checkmate, folks. Can't just go one way. You got a multi-pronged attack. And I'll tell you one thing: lawyers and politicians, arrogant lawyers and politicians, they hate that with a passion. I tell you that. I can tell you that. They had nothing to say. Only have them talk to themselves. This is why what happened over here. I'm not too surprised. All you got to do is study a lot of history. Firearm registry is the road to tyranny. Can lead to genocide and democide as well. Those people don't want to hear that. They're like Shaun of the Dead. They can't handle the truth. You don't have to be an NRA member to figure that one out. All you got to do is study a lot of history in these areas, and trust me, you could nail them to a cross, and you could, that's all they're good at. That includes March Our Lives. I always tell them they're America's version of the Children of Khmer Rouge. So, hey, it's all a wet dream. The bottom line is this: they want to control people. That's how they are. And even they did that to the American colonies before they seceded from Great Britain. All right. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Ooh, this is from yesterday. This is from Liberty Headlines USA.com. Associate editor. Federal Reserve to buy corporate bonds from 750 major companies. Those companies include Nike, broadcaster Fox Corp, PayPal, and Target. The Federal Reserve on Sunday released a list of roughly 750 companies, including Apple, Walmart, ExxonMobil, with corporate bonds it will purchase in the coming months in an effort to keep borrowing costs low and smooth the flow of credit. The central bank also has said so far purchased nearly $429 million in corporate bonds from those 86 companies, including AT&T, Walgreens, Microsoft, Pfizer, and Marathon Petroleum. Talk about fascist takeover, huh? Yeah, Karl Marx will love that. On his Communist Manifesto, he supported central banking, by the way. The Fed announced in March that it would, for the first time in its history, purchase corporate bonds as a intensifying viral outbreak caused panic investors to dump most type of securities in a rush to hold cash. That pushed up a range of interest rates and made it nearly impossible for companies to borrow by issuing new bonds. Yet once the Fed said it intended to purchase up to $750 billion of corporate debt, investors began buying bonds again, and eventually large companies resumed issuing large amounts of new bonds. Recent economic research has found that simply by announcing the program, the Fed was able to boost confidence in corporate bonds and improve the market's efficiency. You see what's going on here? Good grief. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has said by ensuring large companies can borrow more, the Fed is seeking to keep those firms from having to lay off workers, but corporations aren't required to keep all their workers. At a hearing last week, Senator Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, questioned Powell about whether the purchases were still necessary, since the corporate bond market has largely recovered. Powell and said the Fed had to follow through on its promises. To avoid criticism that it might favor a specific industry, yes, you hear one in the background, the Fed said 2 weeks ago that would seek a mimic a broad market index approach on purchase bonds from a range of companies. Consumer product companies such as Quaker Oats and distiller Brown-Forman, which makes Jack Daniels and Woodford Reserve whiskeys, make up roughly a third of the index. The sector is followed by utilities at 10% and energy firms at more than 9%. The index also includes insurance companies, but no banks. Of course, they own them. That's why. The Fed will only buy highly rated debt from financially healthy companies or ones that were highly rated before the pandemic struck. The Fed is legally barred from lending to insolvent companies. It was said it will report it on its purchase every 30 days. The Fed said Sunday that it made its first bond buys from 86 companies last week. Those companies include Nike, broadcaster Fox Corp, PayPal, Target, Campbell Soup, and chip maker Broadcom. The central bank is also purchasing bonds in exchange-traded funds, which operate similar to mutual funds. The Fed currently owns $6.8 billion of bond ETFs. The Treasury Department has provided $75 billion in taxpayer money to backstop any losses from buy bonds. So far, the Fed purchases remain modest relative to the program announced $750 billion cap. By comparison, since March, it has purchased more than $2 trillion in treasuries and mortgage-backed securities in an effort to pump cash into short-term lending markets. This is a very dangerous game, my friends. Talk about a quasi-fascistic, communistic platform. The reason I say communistic as well, because, central banking, which I said before, Karl Marx supports it in La Communist Manifesto. All you got to do is read it. This is very disturbing. So how is capitalism failing America? It's not. We got these clowns trying to take over everything. The same people, they're under the IMF and the World Bank, are trying to take all the islands in Greece as well. Just giving you an example. They want to gobble up everything, and they can put us all into their technocratic society. And that's a fact. Always got to look at those areas very thoroughly. And it's extremely treacherous to humanity because they're the same people that will do the mark of the beast, the chip, and all that good stuff. All got to connect the dots. Same thing with the clergy response team. All right, so we're going to do one more here, which I decided, why not? Came out actually the 26th. SGT report published on their page. And this one here is by Paul Craig Roberts, of course. Escaped from Minneapolis and Seattle. Here's what he has to say. Yesterday, June 26, 2020, the council in Minneapolis, 12 Democrats and 1 Green, unanimously vote to abolish the city's police department. If this measure comes into effect, city residents will have to approve it in the November election. By November, the hamstrung police who are prevented from enforcing the laws in the books might all have resigned and moved away. Regardless, as Minneapolis police are prevented performing their duty, the Minneapolis voters who elected such a crazed government will possibly have been brought to their senses by violence and the absence of police response and voted down the crazed government. If not, kiss Minneapolis goodbye. The non-woke among the citizenry are already trying to get out. But what sensible person wants to move to Minneapolis? It's hard to leave town when your house has a mortgage and there is no market for your property. Everyone in multiracial cities governed by Democrats is thinking the same thought. They know that their businesses and their homes and persons have no protection against rioting and looting. They want to put as much distance as they can between themselves and blacks. The question is, can they unload their houses? The situation in Seattle is even more desperate. Seattle is dying. More truthfully, Seattle has been murdered by the citizens themselves who elected a woke government that favors the criminal element over the law-abiding element. If you doubt the statement, watch this video on this as well. And you gotta make your own decisions, folks. If you want your city to be another Minneapolis or Seattle, vote Democrat. If you want your entire United States to become Minneapolis or Seattle, elect a Democrat president. Indeed, the collapse of white confidence is so total in that the U.S. Republican governments might not make much difference. I think it's interesting here because a lot of folks are working class are getting all slapped in the face. Not just people who are European descent, even productive folks in the African American descent that are self-reliant, don't like what's happening. It's all ethics, not ethnic. So I may call Paul Craig Roberts racist. I disagree. I read his work and I see examples of what's going on. You have to always look at things in a bigger picture. There's some beautiful people in those cities that are getting slapped in the face by tyrants. Provocateurs, etc. And even Minnesota, for an example, doesn't have a right to keep and bear arms, but Article 1, Section 18 makes that a reality. Natural rights. But the bottom line is this: the police were never obligated to protect you as an individual. Or won't protect your property. Keeping the peace in the community best they can. When you got a bunch of sleazeballs trying to run everyone's lives, they don't care what you think. They're the trespassers, the transgressors. I'll tell you one thing. Hell is going to be paying over this. It's going to expect a lot of blowback. If they have a Minnesota militia, if they got to start cleaning house, one way or the other, so be it. You can use force if necessary. Fantastic example happened in Battle of Athens, Tennessee on August 1st and 2nd, 1946. You know what was it over? Election fraud. Trying to control the ballots, the incumbents. And people fought back, GIs. And it was all legit, according to the state investigators. The state investigated. So you should always look that up. It's a very good story. Inspiring, too. You don't want, remember, these ass clowns don't want you to know that. But I do. You have the right to know the truth. You the folks in Seattle, too. Hell's going to be paying real soon. A lot of those little minions out there, they get a lot more they can chew on. Beware of distractions. Pissed on the Bolshevik Revolution, the Marxist ideology, and the New World Order. If you're going to call me a bigot, I could care less. I'll wear that with a badge of honor. All right, my friends, that is it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, if you said something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Quorum. I will leave the footnotes of these articles on my Spreaker page. If you could donate to them, that would be awesome. If you want to send me contributions, you can hit me at paypal.me/LokiLuck3. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.